Everybody, it's Romania Black, and this show, it's heating up, right? We're on episode 17, I believe, right? No, are we on 18? We're on 18 of the Apothecary Diaries. 15 and 16 and 17 have all kind of like flowed together for me. We're on episode 18 of the Apothecary Diaries, and we have things to talk about before this episode starts, including what's happening next week and the week after. So we just need to dive into it because this intro might be a little bit long. So let's do that. Not as long as last week, I do not believe. Not as long as last week with episode 17. But as far as the comments go, I've got some for episode 16. I've got some for episode 17. But I want to go ahead and talk about next week because there was a comment on YouTube that was saying that episode 19 is going to be delayed. And I was like, So luckily the moderator, Be Happy, shared this image from Screen Rant, which I'm not gonna slander any news sources. Can I go on a tiny tangent for just a hot second? I have been bamboozled by certain anime news, and I'm going to put news in quotation marks. These are just my opinions. These are just conjecture. This is not actual factual statements. I'm not slandering anybody or meaning to, but there's been a lot of anime news sites that do features, and they're just, as an English teacher, there's part of me that questions whether I'm in the right field. Should I have pursued journalism a little bit so that I could write these articles? Are they written by ChatGPT? Who knows? But I've noticed with certain anime news sources or websites that sometimes you'll get an ad for an article that'll pop up. A lot of them are spoilery, so I have to avoid most of them, and I've described from most of them. But some of them, I read them and I'm like, how long does this take you to put together? And is this factual? Because some of it's like clickbaity and stuff like that, but whatever. Anyway, end of my soapbox rant about anime news journalism, or the lack thereof. Or those are just my conjecture theories, not factual evidence, can't prove anything. Who knows? Just me, don't mind me. But anyway, there was a Screen Rant article that the moderator shared saying that there will be a break for episode 19 between 18 and 19. It said the break is not due to production issues or delays, but rather to make space for a celebratory special episode. It's scheduled to air on the same night as the usual broadcast. The event will feature a talk session with the Japanese voice actors for Jinshi, Takeo Otsuka, Gaoshun, Katsuyuki Konishi, and Basen, Tatsumaru Tachibana, titled Kurisawa's First Boys Get Together. The special aims to showcase a lighter, more casual side of the series' cast and characters. It reminds me of, in Jujutsu Kaisen, there was a New Year's Eve episode that was kind of like sandwiched in between little mini arcs within the core, and it was just kind of like the voice actors just chilling and talking about the series and having a good time. I hate recap episodes. I hate recap episodes. I'm watching week to week. I don't need a recap episode. And it's just, there's nothing new to react to. I just loathe them. But at first I was like, well, am I just going to avoid this episode? But when I found out it's with the voice actors and it's like a special little thing and they'll probably like recap little bits and talk more about it, I'm like, that has some value. I'm okay with that. And they'll probably talk about little things that maybe would be cool to know before going into episode 19. So I'm fine with that. So my plan is to react to that special episode. I'm assuming if it's not on the streaming service that features Apothecary Diaries, someone may have a file of it, or it might be on YouTube or something to react to. Either way, I definitely want to watch it and have it slated for that week, and then we'll get back to episode 19. Now, what that does kind of tell me is that this episode we're about to watch probably is going to end in a definitive way or with a cliffhanger or something that's going to lead into episode 19, and then we have to wait a week. Now, I am going on 2 different kind of mini vacations in the next couple weeks. I've got 2 planned, one for not this coming weekend, but the following weekend, and one for the first week of June. But in both situations, I am going to get back in time to record Apothecary Diaries to have it come out on time. So timing for Apothecary Diaries is not going to be an issue, thankfully. So that's good. But yeah, I am very intrigued about this. So the special episode, I am going to plan to watch it, so that'll be good. But thank you, Be Happy, for getting that out there so I could see it. As far as the comments go, I have a couple for episode 16 and then one for episode 17. Sparata6232 says, I'm half convinced that Loman had countless admirers in the rear palace. What's not to love about that guy? He was probably very helpful and friendly, not to mention a brilliant doctor as well. What a catch. I mean, for real, if Loman was around in real life, I'd be like, yes, please. Yes, please. Come on. Him being a eunuch, look, I'm on the asexual spectrum, so him being a eunuch means nothing to me. I'm like, we weren't going to get it on that way anyway, so we're fine. I'm like, oh, a handsome, kind doctor? Oh, I'm sorry. Come on in. So, yeah. I totally agree. Loman is a super catch, and I'm not surprised that there is old man Yowie bait all throughout this episode. Algumalgum says the show is making use of some real-world imagery to highlight the Locke and Ishisho rivalry. In classical Japanese literature and folklore, foxes and tanukis are typically rivals. I love it. I love it. They're both trickster archetypes, capable of shape-shifting. We're going to talk about that in a hot second. The fox yokai are generally said to be more magically powerful, while the tanuki yokai are generally better shapeshifters. There's also a snobs versus slobs element, with tanuki being slobs and foxes being snobs. Okay, there is so much to unpack with that, but just briefly going through everything. Of course, I love that MaoMao's family are associated with the foxes. Like, there is a little bit of snobbery with Locken, a little bit of snobbery, and we've seen that with him in his conversation with Jinshi, where he kind of acted a little bit above it, and I was like, okay, I see it. But also the idea of magically powerful, which, you know, the magic of their medicine and everything, and MaoMao being an apothecary, and Loman being an apothecary, and being a doctor, and the magic of science, like, that all fits so well together, and I love it. But Shisho and the Tanukis being shapeshifters, and then you have Lolin, who's his daughter, and how she shapeshifts with all of her cosplay and costumes, and possibly being Shisui. We'll see, hopefully this episode or not. All connects, yeah. And if that's a sign that Shisho, because Shisho has so far acted very, like, ignorant, like woefully and willfully ignorant, and like, I just don't know how this happened. It's like, yeah, are you being sincere or are you tricking us all? So yeah, I think that that's such a great commentary, Algumalgum, to make about this, and I'm going to be super excited to see moving forward how things are going. Okay, with this next commenter, they didn't see, this was for episode 16, so they had not, and it was on YouTube, so they have not been able to watch my rant on episode 17 yet, but they basically were talking about, now, to be fair, they said that they are anime only. They don't know anything moving forward, so they kind of are sharing the same thoughts that I am. I also think it's Shisho who is colorblind, which is what I thought after episode 16. And Locken is testing him to discover that the trait is in his genes. Now, I did question about the motive in there, and they noted if he's colorblind, then that would give him a motive or a potential one, since this is all conjecture, to be after the Imperial brother's life, since that means that he has a bloodline claim to the throne. So yeah, basically, I have talked in previous episodes with my theories that I think that Shisui, one of the things she could be after is the throne, because she loves the Empress Dowager so much, and she might want to get with the Emperor just because she believes that she has a birthright to that, and she wants to continue on the Empress Dowager's agenda, which my thing was, do I think that she's trying to kill Jinshi? That gets complicated because her and MaoMao have such a good relationship. Is she willing to try to assassinate Jinshi if they know? But here's the thing. Does Shisho know that Jinshi is the royal prince? This is where it gets complicated, because as far as we know, Shisui and Shisho and Lolin, by proxy, none of them know that Jinshi the eunuch is actually the imperial brother. So have they been trying to kill the imperial brother and assassinate him this entire time, thinking it will give them a shot at the throne with the emperor, and they won't have Jinshi, the imperial brother, in the way, without realizing that he's Jinshi who MaoMao likes? That's where it gets complicated, and that's where it gets a bit twisted. So it's going to be interesting to see from the show telling me if that's going to come out in the wash this season or not, or if that's going to be a thing, because we still have several episodes of this season. So that's going to be interesting to see if that happens. But I could see Shisui, and I keep saying Shisui because I think her and Lolin are the same person. I keep thinking that Lolin and Shisho, their goal is to kill the brother, the sickly brother that needs to just be taken care of, so that they can sneak in and take the throne alongside the emperor. And they may have ties with Suirei and them for getting rid of Gyokyo and Lihua and just securing Lolin's place as the empress to take over and continue the Dowager Empress's agenda. You know, all good intentions except the murder. So, you know, we'll see if how that gets complicated if they find out Jinshi and the Imperial Brother are the same person, or if they will ever find out, or how that works. It's making things more complicated. Here's my thing. At this point, because people are offering their own theories, and from what I said back last episode, I'm just going to say, yes, I think Shisho is the colorblind one, obviously. I guess Fengshen's alive, because people just can't let the show tell me for sure or not, so we'll just go with that. But I don't want to talk about either of those theories anymore, because it just frustrates me. So as far as you all know, those are my thoughts on it. I guess Fengshen's alive. People were giving me wrong information this whole time and confusing me, but that's where I'm at. And Shisho is apparently colorblind, and what I've just said is my theory on it. And I'm not going to go into more details until the show gives me more info. So that's where we're at. And I've told the mods to be super strict about not letting me read people's theories unless I know for sure you're anime only, and y'all better be telling the truth if you say that. Because some people in the past, let me rant. Some people in the past with other shows have been like, I'm anime only, but then they say a theory so perfect that I'm like, you're lying. you clearly are lying. So I'm like, and I don't know why people would do that, but people have done it in the past, and it's super frustrating as a content creator to being like, just be honest. Like, I don't know if they just want clout or me to mention them in the intros or just to take claim to fame that they told me. I don't know. But it's been frustrating in the past. So if you get a comment from me that says flagged by the moderators or flagged as spoilers, or if I just say thanks, that means I didn't read your comment because the mods have said you're trying to spoil or you're not like adhering to what I've respectfully asked in the comments. And that's all I'll say about that. But yeah, Ice Princess at least said they were anime only, and I appreciate that honesty, to be fair. And then finally, Anime Annie said, getting to see, for episode 17, getting to see the facade Jinshi portrays as Jinshi the eunuch disappear when he becomes overly anxious about MaoMao alongside that clenched fist does remind me of Mr. Darcy from Pride and Prejudice 2. Both have difficulty in controlling their emotions when it comes to the women that they care for. Yeah, again, we've talked about how Jinshi is very similar to Locken, I feel. I feel like when Locken finds out that MaoMao has been taken, he's gonna freak out or get really scary. So we'll see how that goes. Meanwhile, MaoMao's calmness to being kidnapped, I feel, is incredibly similar to the way Loman views her disappearance. Nothing can come of getting frantic about the situation, and instead, it's better to remain calm and do what you can. There's two things about that statement, which I totally agree with. One, it's a really cool callback to episode 1, where back in episode 1 of the series, season 1, episode 1, I was so thrown off by how nonchalant MaoMao was with being kidnapped and taken to the rear palace. I was like, girl, how are you reacting this way? But it's really cool to see now, full circle, a season and a half later, that no, that's actually a really good response and coping mechanism that, like, I can't do anything about this. I'm just going to remain calm and see what I can do. Like, it all comes back and has a much better light about it now that you know what you know about MaoMao and her upbringing. But two, that just to me solidifies MaoMao and Jinshi as a couple, because Jinshi gets very emotional, and it's like, you took away it's like when he was a kid and Suiren took away his toy and everything and he got mad. It's like, you took away my prized treasure. I'm pissed now, except now it's a real person. And I like the idea of the balance between Jinshi being like emotional and kind of flying off the handle, and MaoMao being like, now hold on, let's think about this and act rationally, even though she can get just as mad and just as into it, right? It's nice. It's also a nice play on the trope because Jinshi is in a potential leadership position. I know in American culture, it's almost a meme now, but it's anytime there's like questioning whether a woman should be in a position of political leadership, there's always the question of, well, she'll just get so emotional and her periods and everything, and she'll fly off the handle. And I'm like, I'm sorry, who started all the wars in the past hundreds of thousands of years? want no lady. So I just, and that's a generalization. There have been women starting wars, but the majority historically give credit to men. It's just funny. It's a meme at this point, and it just cracks me up because I'm like, and you see in this series, Jinshi flying off the handle, and it's like, it's fun. It's a fun time. Anyway, I am super excited about this episode. Thank you for bearing with me with these comments. I have really enjoyed. There's been some really good comments the last couple of weeks with the series, and I so appreciate that. Thank you. There is a way to comment without spoiling, and some of you do an amazing job of that, so I really appreciate it. But here's the thing. I have waited until practically the last minute to watch this episode because I know that we're going to have to wait like a week and a half until the next episode. So I'm like, okay. So I know I'm going to have to wait a while before episode 19, even though we have that extra in the middle. So I'm just bracing myself for the cliffhanger this one's probably going to end us with. But we're not watching the OP, so we're going to start at 1 minute and 28 seconds. And we're going to start episode 18 of the Apothecary Diaries, season 2. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Oh, friends. This is my favorite episode of the second half of the season so far. And I'm not just saying it because we got confirmation that Shisui is Lowland. Thank God we're finally here. That's not just the reason. But seeing Jinshi crash out, but also have this layer of complexity arise within his character was so validating and intriguing. And then getting answers to one question, but 1,000 more questions being asked as well. And then MaoMao, why is she a captive? There's lots of theories, lots of things. Look, I'm going to say this before I get excited because I'm going to be excited to read the comments, but what I'm not going to read is people trying to correct me or tell me that why would you think that and whatever. Just let me cook. And if I'm wrong, the show will inform me that I'm wrong. And I'm so excited about this episode. I really am. This episode, oh my God. This episode was satisfying in such a good way, but we need to talk about it for Lantern Plant. Lantern Plant, oddly enough, I was surprised this episode was called that because there's only one mention of it, but I feel like it's such a clue that Jinshi misses. It's like, why would there be this out of season plant here? And it's like, because you're not, that plant is literally a clue to where MaoMao is or where they could have taken her. And Jinshi just hasn't connected the dots yet, but that's okay. We will get there. I think a couple things have come to note immediately, and that is that Jinshi and Locken are very similar. But also Jinshi is not fit to be emperor. We're going to talk about it. I've got Whiteboard Kun already kind of set up because I needed to organize my thoughts to have a cohesive discussion with you all. But no, Jinshi's, maybe a little too emotional to be emperor, especially when it comes to MaoMao. Like, this is a man who's had 2 assassination attempts on his life. Chill as a cucumber. Not a problem. Heat stroke, not a problem. His mother getting sent to another facility, not a problem. The woman he has a crush on and maybe loves getting kidnapped, end of the world. Like, just nuclear option enabled. Like, buddy. I feel like Jinshi, unless MaoMao is by your side as Empress, this is not going to work. But I want to talk about that I think that there is a way that neither of them will have to worry about that. We're going to talk about it as well and what this entire series is basically going to be about. And so I'm really excited about that. But yeah, so Gyokyo's in labor. We might as well talk about that, and that she's in the very beginning process of this ordeal. Now, here's the thing. I don't know if you, the viewer at home, is privy to how labor works. But women being in labor, it is a process. I have not had a child, but I have many friends who have, and it is a varied experience. It's been from one scenario where one of my friends, she did like she went to a birthing center, had a midwife, did a hot tub time machine baby where she got in the hot tub with her baby, and she started labor like at 2 a.m. and by 5 a.m. she had the baby, and it was like a 4-hour affair, and she popped that baby out and it was like, boom, done. That is rare to have a labor that's only a couple hours. Now, I've had on the other end friends that have had labor for 11 hours, friends that have labored for 24 hours. I even knew somebody that labored for like 36, and I was like, oh my God, that's so long. But typically, I feel that the general labor time for most of the women that I've talked to is between 10 and 12 hours, right? So theoretically, depending on, now here's the thing too, is this actual labor with Gyokyo, or are these just like false contractions? They're not, are they timed within a certain amount of each other happening? Has she dilated so many centimeters? Like, we don't know the specifics yet. So this could be just like a pre-deal, and maybe she's not in full on, full out labor yet. They haven't said whether her water's broke. Usually when your water breaks, that's the sign you're about to be in labor. They haven't really talked about that in this. So, longest case scenario, this is just kind of like a false alarm or something. She's not actively going into labor yet. We've still got some days or an indiscriminate amount of time. Once that water breaks and she actively goes into labor, by the next day, you're probably going to have a baby. So I think that's, again, I don't think we're going to find out with Gyokyo until the end of the season. I think that they've just established that she could be in labor, about to be in labor, but that puts us on a time clock. And so we don't exactly know how that's going. The good news is that MaoMao's treatments worked and that the baby is not breech anymore. She could naturally have the baby, which is thumbs up. And plus, I feel super confident with Loman there that things are going to be okay. He's there to help out. I think that's a good thing, because poor Quack Doctor, he's panicking. He doesn't know what to do. I would be the Quack Doctor in this scenario. I'd be like, oh, one of my mom's dogs had to have a C-section, and I about fainted. I was like, I'm not equipped to handle that. So I was like, I'd be the Quack Doctor. But I do think that Jinshi brings up a really good conversation, in that you do need sometimes people to be outwardly emotional to center yourself. And I've seen that happen in real life, where somebody that is normally the most calm person in the room, whenever there's something traumatic happen, they freak out. And then I've had people who are normally very and then they just kind of like have to center themselves. And sometimes there usually has to be one person panicking in the room to get everyone else to calm down and kind of take it like seriously. And that's the weirdest thing. But I totally understand where Jinshi is coming from, where he's like, it's good that the doctor's panicking because it shows that there's normalcy. It's normal to panic. It's okay. We're all in the same boat. And 2, we're all going to make it out. It's going to be fine. I think Jinshi, it's important for him to have that person, like the doctor there, to kind of like center him and be like, okay, yeah, I'm not acting irrationally and worrying about this. Let's take it seriously and calm down. The thing is, that's only happens in the part where Gyokyo's in potential labor. Then every other scenario, everyone else is calm, so Jinshi freaks out. So it's like, Also, we get the fist clench, where he's just like, we don't get to see Loman's reaction of whether he notices Jinshi clenching his fist, but this whole episode was a build up before Jinshi snapped, and Jinshi finally snapped, and he got close to snapping with Shinlu, which we'll talk about, but then he fully on snapped on Rinlu, on the other girl. Oh, that was, I don't want to make Jinshi mad, but that was like I am terrified and aroused moment. I was like, oh, buddy. Yeah, like, just don't make him mad. Don't make him mad. Him and Locken, don't make them mad. You don't want to be on their bad side. You literally don't. But poor Quack Doctor looking after the cat. That's super cute. All right. Yeah, someone's as panicked as I am. Yeah, this whole episode was a beautiful build of Jinshi's emotions. He's like, also, it's been 10 days. 10 days since MaoMao disappeared. So I get concerned by that, because like, what are they building up? Why are they keeping her hostage? And we'll talk about that. Like, what are the possible reasons beyond that? Like, what's the point? So we'll get into that. I think I have some ideas of possible things that I'm probably totally wrong about. So then they find out about the missing eunuch. I love the connection. Tian. Well, Taiho, Tian, Can't imagine the similarities there. Can't imagine the connections. Again, the important thing they establish about this episode is like 90% of what they talk about is conjecture. It's conjecture. There's no solid evidence. So we're just going by what Jinshi thinks, what he's establishing as a possibility, and we just got to go from there. But yeah, clearly Suirei snuck in and nobody really questioned him. And the shrine, the thing is, the shrine that they establish, they haven't figured out that it's the secret passage. So I thought they were going to figure out in this episode that there's a secret passage in the shrine. And did they talk about that last episode? Maybe they did, but I kept wondering if they were going to question about it. So we find out the graveyard on the north side is in fact not the graves of the children that died, but the graves of the women who died that had been deflowered by the late emperor. It's weird. It's weird that it's phrased that way. And I did think about this during the reaction because I'm like, the way that they address that is almost to acknowledge that the women were very young when that happened and it was an inappropriate gesture. Because if you think about it, the whole point of the Rear Palace is that all these women are here to get deflowered by the emperor. That's the point. But they frame it in a certain way because it's disgusting what the OG emperor did because they were so young. So the act itself, even though it's very normalized by this culture, it's framed in a certain way because of the kind of unspoken intolerance of what he did, which rightfully so. It's just interesting because literally you brought these women in just like you bring the women in for the current emperor so that they'll have children. You're just framing it in a certain way because what he did was disgusting because of their age. And I'm like, okay, but that makes sense because it is disgusting and it's horrible. And yes, but I'm also like, what you're doing with the current emperor is no different. They're just of age. So, and I know there's a huge difference in consent and a huge difference in maturity. It's just interesting that it's the same system, but because of that slight difference, the language changes. As an English teacher, that's so interesting because of the context, the connotation, everything, and it all makes sense, and I'm not dissing it. I just think it's fascinating that it's put forth that way in the episode. It's just intriguing. So yeah. But yeah, she's standing in front of that grave, and that grave is clearly of her mother, of her mom. Which is so curious to me. Yeah. They vanished in the garden without even a record of their names being kept. Now, I had something to note about that moment, but we're going to get to it about Shinlu and everything, because Jinshi says something and I don't think Jinshi is accurate, but we're going to get to that point here in a little bit. So Shinlu is at the grave of Taiho. She has the same eye color as Suirei. We're going to get to that. And then she is trying to get out of there lickety split because she's like, oh shit, the feds are here. I don't want to get involved or for them to find out that I was included in MaoMao's kidnapping. So she tries to leave real quick, but that's when Jinshi smells the essential oils. And that's what MaoMao had been making, but also what MaoMao had pointed out were the poisons. So he in turn is like, wait a minute, there's a connection between all of this. Do you know where MaoMao went? And for a hot second, Jinshi loses his cool. He loses it. And I think if Jinshi hadn't tried to self-correct and go back to like the honeyed eunuch voice that the younger women that didn't know the late emperor react to, I think that it wouldn't have drawn out this response from her because him being upset, she didn't react to that nearly as much as when he tried to auto and self-correct. He's like, I'm Jinshi the eunuch right now. And then he corrects and says, oh, I'm looking for the as if that was not going to be weird. As if he's like, where's MaoMao? I mean, the freckled girl in waiting. Like you've already screwed the pooch. It's already over. But he tries to autocorrect. And that's when she freaks out because he immediately reminds her of the OG Emperor in that moment. And that's a problem because she's not dead. And she knows that Jinshi is the brother now. That's the problem. That's the problem, is that she knows too much. Now she knows the secret of Jinshi being the imperial prince. Yikes. How are we going to get around that one? Because she knows, and I'm like, Shinlu's screwed. I don't know how she's getting around it, because she can't go back to the clinic, because she's going to tell every woman there that there is a man related to the OG emperor posing as a eunuch. She's going to go back and tell everybody, so she can't go back to the clinic, but she can't go back out into society because she's just going to tell everything else. I'm like, are they going to cut out her tongue? How are we going to do that? The only thing I can think of is if from taking the poison and going through that stress, if she has amnesia or something from it, which if they wanted to use that as a plot device, okay. But otherwise, is she going to get locked up forever? Is Jinshi going to make her swear to take it to her grave? How is that going to work? Someone has figured it out that he's not a eunuch and not Jinshi. So what do we do about that? Like, that just, this whole scene opened an entire can of worms that I'm like, I don't know how they're going to resolve it and how they can resolve it. Because she's like, why are you posing as a eunuch, someone of your status? So then we have the image of her as a kid when she met the emperor, and she has the same eye color as Suirei, or similar, and she has like the wavy hair, which, you know, she doesn't look entirely like Suirei, so we're going to talk about their relation here in a hot second. The thing that maybe creeps me out the most about the OG emperor in this scene is when he hands her the candy, his hand is so, it's not just pale, it's like sallow, like he hasn't seen the sunlight at all. It's vampiric. It's unhealthy. It's creepy. But yeah, the fact that he gives her that and has such pale features. And the problem is that he is such a gross person and he does such horrible things, but then he has such a beautiful appearance. It's deceptive and it's creepy. And of course, Jinshi feels horrible because he gets confirmation that he looks like his creepy grandpa, which is problematic. She's like, nobody knows. She's like, no one here knows what he looked like when he was young. Because, yeah, I mean, Shinlu is right. The current people working in the rear palace and stuff, they all are too young to know what he looked like when he was younger. They only see him as an old man. And so she's like, only the old women in the clinic know. She's like, they've just heard through rumors. But he had a voice as sweet as honey and the face of a goddess. Why is someone of your status pretending to be a eunuch? And that's such a moment for Jinshi, because he kind of like, bless Gaoshun. Gaoshun's trying to hold it all together. Gaoshun's trying to lock in and be like, Jinshi, you got to snap out of it. You got to get in this. You got to lock in and get out of your headspace because we've got stuff to do. And we're going to talk about Lahan and all of that with that. But what's interesting with Jinshi in all of this, and we'll put Jinshi over here, is that Jinshi for a while had questioned if he was illegitimate, which he is. But you know, if he was illegitimate, if he was actually related to the emperor, which is a fair observation, because like we've talked about this entire series, he looks nothing like the empress. Kind of, nothing really. He looks nothing like his father whatsoever, or his brother, but Papa Bro, they have no resemblance. He looks like Aduo. Now, how Jinshi has not made the connection of being possibly Aduo's son, I don't know, because they look exactly the same. And so maybe he was like, is Aduo my mom? And I'm not the empress's child. Like, maybe that's what he was talking about when he heard the rumors of him being illegitimate. But he's literally the emperor's son, so it's kind of like, you are legitimate, but you're not, but you are, you know? So, but then it's like, is that worse that he looks like the OG emperor? I mean, what's worse? Being connected to a man that was terrible and horrifying, or being illegitimate? Which one is the worst case scenario? And I'm sorry, but see, Shinlu tries to poison herself. She should have had a poison capsule. That was her problem. But yeah, I like this one eunuch made her throw up. Good on him. Great going. But they take her to the doctor, and Gaoshun gets it together. Gaoshun's like, we got things to do. But yeah, he's like, do I look like him? And Gaoxun's like, enough to make someone drink poison out of fear. And Gaoxun immediately kind of softens in that moment because he realizes where Jinshi's coming from and why he's upset. And he's like, in my memory, he was always a withered old man. And I didn't look like my mother or my brother. And so, yeah, all the people, like, with the rumors, everyone said he was a illegitimate child. I feel so bad for Jinshi, like him hiding under the covers and crying. Like, this poor kid, somebody give Jinshi a hug. And he's like, I believe the rumors that said I had no connection to him. So this is like an identity crisis all building up. Because when Jinshi, what's so interesting about this is that Jinshi is kind of up until this point, he liked when MaoMao was disgusted with him. At first, right? He made that connection. He's like, oh, I love how she looks at me like I'm an insect. And we as the audience took that to be like, oh, well, he has this kink where he likes being, you know, degraded and stuff and whatever. Now there's a layer to it where he's like, was my appearance enough to make a woman try to kill herself? And, you know, by the standard we set up in season 1, you would think that Jinshi would be flattered by being disgusting, you know, like MaoMao did with him. But now it's like, was that part of the act? Was MaoMao being disgusted at him part of him trying to mask through being Jinshi the eunuch that's okay and that was refreshing? But now it's taking a different turn because it's not her being disgusted at him as a joke. She literally tried to kill herself because he reminded her of his grandfather. And now he's like, I believed the rumors that said I had no connection, and I tried to escape the position of crown prince. So we find out Jinshi's the one that volunteered to be a eunuch. And the emperor was like, okay, that just benefits me. So Jinshi volunteered as a way to escape his lineage. Which brings this all the more to light that he's like, I can't escape my lineage. I am related to this man. And if I end up being the crown prince that becomes the emperor, what would that be like? What would the older people that knew my grandfather say about me? And then what was this all for? All for what? He's like, this is ridiculous. Yeah. And then he like looks over at the grave. Like, have I been a fool for running away from who I was and not treating this the right way? And then we see the lantern flowers. I'm glad they said it's Taiho. I'm glad. But then I love that he thinks back to what Loman said in this moment, being like, you can think about your lineage and everything later. You can worry about that whenever. Right now, you need to focus on getting MaoMao back. You need to do what is in your means. And I love that it goes from Loman talking to MaoMao saying you can only do what you can do. I love that MaoMao is his source of advice. She is his center. She grounds him. Whenever he gets lost, she's there. And I'm like, MaoMao, if you only knew, girl, how much you influence this man. Because MaoMao's convinced that she's nothing, that she's inconsequential. She doesn't have any point of being anybody's inspiration. I'm like, girl, you have no freaking clue. And if you knew, if only you knew. If he doesn't hug her as soon as he sees her again, I'm going to be a little bit disappointed. He says, I can laugh at myself later for being ridiculous and thinking I could run away from my lineage. So yeah, he's like, now we got to just focus on this and go from there. Okay. Now here's the thing. I fully believe that MaoMao and Jinshi does not need to be the emperor. Nope, does not need to be. The emperor that we see currently definitely deserves to be where he's at. Jinshi has no desire for the throne. In fact, he'd really like to avoid it. But I like the fact that Jinshi is coming to the conclusion that he can't run away from his lineage. He does have to bear responsibility and be accountable. And you can't just be a eunuch and run away from responsibility forever. But that doesn't necessarily mean be an emperor, right? He can do other things being connected to his bloodline that are more relevant or more consequential than just running around the rear palace all day. Not that that's not important. What he does is very important. And if he wanted to say Jinshi the eunuch and do that, I don't think that'd be a problem. But I think he's realizing that his position it requires him to be a little bit more considerate of that responsibility and what weight it holds, right? So I don't think Jinshi's going to become the emperor. I think that one of these women are going to have a boy, and that's going to be, then my thing is, I don't think Jinshi wants to be the emperor, will become the emperor, or needs to become the emperor. I think one of these concubines will have, one of these consorts will have a son that will take over from the emperor. And the emperor seems to be a good dad. So I think that'll be great. And Ling Li can do her own thing. But what I also think is that MaoMao, we're going to talk about family obligations. I think MaoMao and Jinshi can run off and do their own thing by the end of this story. I think what this series is going to be about from now on is ensuring that Jinshi gets the freedom to go off with MaoMao and do their escapades or shenanigans and be together. And it's going to be about protecting the lineage that offers Jinshi that freedom. So I think there is going to be a son born, whether it's with Lihua or Gyokyo. There is going to be a son. And then the rest of the series is going to be making sure that son stays safe so he can become the emperor. And Jinshi's like, do this so that your uncle Jinshi can get out and do his own thing with MaoMao. So I think that's what's going to be the case, right? But we've got to work towards that. And I'll talk about MaoMao's situation at the end of this. So Jinshi goes through this lineage, right? So we have some things that are put into question. We have some things that are called into question, okay? We have Taiho. She's revealed to be one of the concubines that was a lady in waiting for another concubine in the rear palace. Now, Taiho, we had one of the things that was brought up was that in previous episodes, it was said that there was a young woman who had a daughter with the emperor, and she got the daughter away. The daughter was kicked out. She wasn't recognized as legitimate, probably because it wasn't a son. And the daughter was kicked out and sent away with a doctor, and that was that. And then the woman that had been deflowered by the emperor stuck around and worked in the clinic. That was what was established. So, a couple things. We believe Taiho was that woman. That would make Suirei the daughter of the OG emperor, which would make her the emperor's sister, like half sister, illegitimately, right? Because, I mean, which isn't surprising because there were lots of babies that died, lots of kids that didn't make it that were half siblings to the current emperor, right? And by nature, the structure of this entire system allows for there to be lots and lots and lots of half siblings running around, right? It's just a matter of who's the emperor who's recognized as legitimate. So, for all accounts, it is conjecture we can think that Suirei is a half-sister to the emperor. Okay? Which also is legitimate because she seems like about the same age as Jinshi, who is literally the same age as the emperor's brother who died from the honey. So all this in the timeline adds up for Suirei to be the half-sister to the emperor. And as we've seen in this show, these emperor's genetics, they ain't strong because like Ling Li looks exactly like Gyokyo. Jinshi looks just like Aduo. If you told me that Suirei looks just like her mom, all that makes sense. The emperor's genetics are pretty recessive at this point. But the thing that Jinshi notes is Jinshi says that Suirei was supposedly the daughter of Taiho and her affair with a doctor. But the previous episodes we've seen from the other side say, no, Taiho was assaulted by the emperor. Suirei is her daughter, and it was with the emperor, and she just sent her off with the doctor to cover it up and say it was an affair. So, which is it? Which is true? We don't have confirmation. We just have two different stories being told, right? So that's interesting. So the thing about this too is that Taiho and Shinlu seem to have some connection. They don't confirm what that connection is, but they have a connection. So the question is, was Shinlu Taiho's biological sister? Jinshi says that Taiho had no relations. But again, can we trust what Jinshi says? Because do we think Jinshi has all the knowledge? So was Taiho and Shinlu biological sisters? Because they do seem kind of similar. And there's definitely a connection there. Or were Taiho and Shinlu like quote unquote sisters? Like we're talking Handmaid's Tale, sisters in arms, like, yes, we both were deflowered by the OG Emperor, so we are like blood sisters. We're like sisters who share that same affinity. We're not biologically related, but we are sisters in our shared experience, and that's what we're connected by. You know, maybe, or are they just friends? We don't know. But Shinlu also believes that she was possibly assaulted by the Emperor, if not confirmed in this episode. And she knows Jinshi's secret that he's related to the Emperor. So, yeah. Anyway, so then it gets complicated because we understand that Taiho, she had blue hair like Suirei, so genetics. Then we know that she was the one that was leading all of the ghost stories up until a year ago when she died. So in the reaction, I was a little bit wrong. In the reaction, I thought she was the woman telling the ghost stories in the episode with MaoMao and Shisui and Xiaolon. No, she was the woman that died, that another woman took her place. Okay? So that gets complicated because that means the woman that took her place is connected possibly to Shisui or Suirei, or is in on the scheme. Because, like we established a few episodes ago that MaoMao found out, the entire clinic, the building resentment, the entire clinic, they hate the OG Emperor because they're all women that were deflowered by him, that are forced to stay there against their will. And so thus, they probably have it out. So the clinic is literally just there for the women. They dislike the current regime because they're connected to the OG Emperor. But they don't have a choice because they're stuck there. So here's the thing. If they're like, we don't like the current Emperor's family because of the OG Emperor's actions, is it plausible that they were complicit? It's like a force of destruction from within. They were complicit with the downfall of the current Emperor and Jinshi? Possibly. Now, here's the thing. Jinshi and MaoMao are trying to protect the clinic because it is such a great resource there in the rear palace. And so far, the women there definitely care about Gyokyo and Lihua and the women that work there and whatever, but they do have a fostering or festering resentment towards Jinshi and the Emperor because of their father and grandfather. So that's kind of a problematic element, right? And they talked in previous episodes about trying to correct that. Here's the thing. I don't know if Jinshi's the one to go in and correct it, because if he looks exactly like the OG Emperor and talks like him, the minute he goes in there, those older women are going to be like, nope, you remind us of the OG Emperor. We don't want anything to do with you. So maybe it was good that he figured that out now so that he's not the spokesperson going in and trying to correct and fix things. Maybe he'll send MaoMao to do that. Maybe MaoMao can go in and do it. Maybe the current Emperor can do it. Who knows? Because the current Emperor looks nothing like his dad. So who knows? But I think that Suirei and Shisui went in there to start getting stuff riled up. They got a hold of Shinlu, who could be their great aunt for all we know, and could have been like, hey, we're planning this thing to overthrow the current administration, the current royal family. And Shinlu's like, fine, whatever, I'm going to die here anyway. So, and the other women in the clinic were like, fine, we're going to die here anyway with nothing to our names. So sure, we'll help you out. So they helped out with the ghost story incident, especially if they found out that they were, Taiho's daughter. And we'll talk about Shisui in a minute, especially if they found out that Suirei was Taiho's daughter. And they're like, of course we'll help out our fellow sister and her kid. Absolutely. Who knows? But anyway, so the weird thing is that we find out that Taiho, the concubine she was working for, ended up getting with Shisho. She was sold and, well, what do you say? Given to Shisho. That's interesting. Because she was a concubine. Now, granted, what that means is that she was not considered good enough for the emperor. Now, the question is, good enough for the current emperor or good enough for the OG emperor? Because if she got to maturity, that's not surprising if the OG emperor was like, oh, you're not a kid anymore, bye, and then sold her off to Shisho, which Shisho was connected to the OG emperor, so that would make sense. But it could also be that she didn't get upgraded with the current emperor because she just wasn't his taste. He just was like, no. Or she was connected to the OG emperor and his, lady in waiting, whatever. And he was like, no, I don't want to be with you. Regardless of the reason, she was not deemed good enough for the OG or current emperor. So she was given to Shisho being like, she's not going to be a consort, so here. Which, as we've seen in this series, some women take offense to that. So it reminds me a lot of Sheen and Li Hua a little bit, where, Sheen was not deemed good enough for the emperor, and she got kind of jealous about that and a little bit scorned and did some extreme things. So if Lolan's mom wasn't deemed good enough for the emperor, maybe she had a reaction to that. Maybe she talked to Shisho about that. But regardless, she ends up as Shisho's wife, and they have Lolan, aka Shisui. So here's where things get weird. Shisui says that her and Suirei are sisters. Again, they don't look anything alike. So I am less inclined to believe that they are biologically sisters and more that they are like sisters in arms, like, hey, our mothers were kind of screwed by the system. We were screwed over by the emperor. We're sisters in that regard. And so we're both kind of pissed about it. And so I think this adds some justification. Suirei has nothing to lose. Her mom is dead and the OG emperor is gone, but she has a stake in the claim being like, I'm the biological daughter of the emperor, so I have a stake to the throne. Okay. Then you have Shisui, whose dad and mom are connected to the royal family. But here's the thing. Shisho is colorblind. So Shisho has a claim to the bloodline that the royal family prides itself by and has claim for its own, being worthy of the throne. So it is possible, because we know that the emperor and Jinshi are not colorblind. So even though they are genetically lined up with the throne, they don't have the markers that establish them as being the birthright throne, I'm trying to say. They're not, by birthright and their lineage, sure, they are eligible to be part of the royal family, to be the emperor, but they don't have the one trait that started out the royal family line anymore. It's kind of diluted, right? So if Shisho comes in and makes a stake being like, look, we have the royal markers. We also aren't, we have the royal markers. We're not tied up with the really creepy emperor and his mother and all of that. They're like, we deserve the throne. All that jazz. At first, I thought that Shisui was trying to get in there and get with the emperor and designate herself as the Dowager Empress, because I think that Shisui has good intentions in wanting to become the Empress. I think that she has a lot of ideas. She agrees with the Empress Dowager, and she's like, I want to keep that up and I want to be progressive. But I think that once she realized the emperor wasn't interested in her, or maybe she didn't care to begin with, maybe she wasn't trying to get his attention. Maybe it was all just to keep, I think that she was not trying to get his attention because she kept on doing things to drive him away, because that way she can move around more freely and not be at a risk of being found. My position has changed. I was thinking at the start of this second season that Shisui was trying to come in, establish herself as a Empress candidate so that she could continue the bloodline, carry on the Dowager Empress's mission, and be the one that the emperor gets with. I don't think that's it now. I think that they're trying to overthrow the throne. I think they're trying to get Jinshi and the emperor out of there so that they can take over. I really do, because if she doesn't expect that she's coming back and they've taken MaoMao away, they've taken MaoMao as a hostage because they know that she's Locken's daughter. She's a chief strategist's daughter. They can use her as a piece to negotiate with. They're keeping her there for those reasons, I believe. And they may try to convince her along the way, being like, well, don't you rather, I feel like it's going to be like, wouldn't you rather stay here where things are freer and better? And MaoMao's going to be like, but my dad and Jinshi, and what about that? So I feel like they're keeping MaoMao as a hostage, and they know she's smart. So they're trying to keep her complacent and just being like, here you go, just drink your juice, Shelby, stay here, don't cause a fuss. But they're keeping her as a hostage because they know she's a bargaining chip. And Shisui knows that she likes Jinshi. So whether Shisui has figured out that Jinshi's the imperial prince like Shinlu has, she still thinks that there's a chance that because Jinshi's attracted to her, that can sway Jinshi, which should sway the emperor and so forth. MaoMao's a hostage. And they know that they can use her for whatever reason, right? But damn, there's so much going on with this. But yeah, so he's like, man, we established in this episode Jinshi doesn't know the full story because even he is like, maybe Lolan knows where the doctor and daughter went. So he hasn't even made connections of this. My questions at this point with this family tree that I hope the show answers, whether it's this season or beyond, my questions are Shinlu and Taiho related? That would answer a lot of questions. Are Taiho... There's so much going on. I have to keep myself on track. I wondered also, because this entire series has been about pairs and about connections like Shin and Lihua and the two envoys that are cousins and whatever. I'm like, was the concubine and Taiho related? Were they sisters? Because in the scene where Jinshi sees them back to back, but we can't see their faces, I'm like, were they related? Were they sisters? And it was like a Shin and Lihua situation where the one concubine ends up becoming the one that gets to be with Shisho, and the other one was just a lady in waiting, and it was just a matter of circumstance. And if they were sisters, or even if they were cousins or whatever, that would make, Shisui and Suirei related, even if they weren't biological sisters, and they just do like Shinlu and Taiho do and call each other sisters, and it's that type of bond. It's not like a biological bond, but it's just what they call each other. I don't know. But the moment that they showed the two women back to back, side to side, they had like the same side profile, except one just had bigger bosoms than the other. So, he's like, Jinshi's like, I don't know the full story. I don't know where everything's going, but I can just do what I can. And this scene where he calls out, I've been waiting for this scene for so long, because y'all know I have been theorizing for months now that Lolan and Shisui were the same person, and that it was a Padme Amidala situation, and one of the ladies in waiting was posing as her. We've seen how they all look the same, and it just feels so satisfying to get the show to just come out and say, yes, that's exactly what's going on. I was like, oh, so good. So good. So yes, this poor girl who is posing as the one woman, the moment Jinshi notices the mole, the makeup can't cover it up. This man was terrifying. Like Jinshi just being like, this was planned all along. Like this man, I would not want to make Jinshi mad. Like this girl's traumatized forever. She's not going to be able to stay in that rear palace. And him just like grabbing her by the mouth and holding her, being like, where is she? Where did she go? Like, where did concubine Lolan go? Like, the fact of how angry he is. Let's not make Jinshi mad. Let's not make Jinshi mad. The thing about it is we never see the Emperor this mad. He seems pretty chill all the time. Jinshi, don't make him mad. Just don't do it. I cannot believe how... And Gaoxun just let it happen. Gaoxun's like, just let him get it out of his system at this point. Let him get it out of his system at this point, right? Because it did reveal that Shisui is gone. She wouldn't be returning. That, to me, the moment the one head lady in waiting said that she wouldn't be returning, meant that they were anticipating they would eventually figure out that it wasn't her. But I think they were just trying to stall. I think they're going to go to war I think that the envoys are teaming up with Shisho, and I think the northern region wants to take control of the throne and make Lolan the Empress. I think that they are going to go to war with the Emperor and Jinshi. Which, you know what? That would give Jinshi the opportunity to rise in the ranks and not only take back his position as crown prince, because here's my thing. I think Jinshi will be like, okay, I'm not going to have to be Jinshi the eunuch forever. I'm going to eventually have to take my place as my brother's, as the brother to the Emperor, even though he's the son of the Emperor. But I think that he would be able to, it would be interesting to see Jinshi like go into action as like a commander or like the leader of a unit. We've seen him practice before with Basen, so he is trained militarily. He's been to the camp. He's done all that. He's been training with them. I think it would be interesting to see Jinshi work alongside Locken, because Locken's a military strategist. So if Jinshi's like a commander of an army, I would love to see Jinshi and Locken work together. And it's like, oh, hi, you're my future father-in-law. And he's like, you're my son-in-law. Don't get killed, mother trucker. I would love that dynamic. That would be amazing. And then I think that if Jinshi, if Lihua or Gyokyo end up having a son, well, the Emperor's bloodline's secured. It will just go to the son. And Jinshi can be the uncle, the brother of the Emperor, off doing his own thing with MaoMao. I think that could all work out. We just got to make sure, this series just got to make sure everything works out for them. So yeah, the question is, what do we do now? They don't know where Lolan is. And I like that Jinshi's like, she's not a concubine anymore, which is so true. It's like, no, once you commit a crime this severe, you're not coming back and getting with the Emperor. I think it's war at this point. And Shisho leaving and disappearing, I think all but spells out that, yeah, we're about to go to war. So yeah. So he's like, bringing the daughter of a high-ranking official into the rear palace benefits the Emperor, because he can trap them in the birdcage that is the rear palace as a hostage. And then we see the little bird. Shisho seemed to care for his daughter a lot. So who knows how he really felt. I don't know. The more I think about this situation, the more I felt like it was never intended for her to stay and become the Empress with the Emperor. I feel like she was brought in along with Suirei, because Suirei was there before she posed as a eunuch. I feel like both of them came in at the same time, or around the same time, with Shisho, with the intent of getting as much information from within the rear palace as possible to map out and do espionage, and then figure out its weaknesses from within, leave, report back, and then attack it, knowing where those weaknesses are. I think that was exactly, and the envoy showing up was like the signal that things were about to go down. And the envoys being there, like, I feel like all this is being set up to attack the royal family and figure out if it's, worth it or not, or if they're going to fail. Also, I want to point out that when Jinshi, he's like, who knows how he really felt? And then he imagines in his mind, he says there, he's like, I wonder how it was for MaoMao. She said one time that it's like a courtesan trying to quit. And I love when he imagines her. He imagines her in nature, surrounded by foliage, like with the shoujo filter on. It's like all the sparkles. And she's like just in this beautiful hair flopping everything. I'm like, Jinshi. Like, she just looks so whimsical in this. Fooling no one, sir. And then he questions for a moment if she went with them willingly. If he was like, did she feel... Because I think this is Jinshi's, like, inner intrusive thoughts. Because before, I think he's always felt guilty that she was brought to the rear palace to begin with. He's always felt guilty that she was brought there against her will, and that she's there under, circumstances that she's not been entirely consensual towards. I always feel like he's felt guilty about that. And when it was brought up last episode with Loman, you could tell he still feels guilty. So he, for a hot second, wonders if she left of her own accord because she hated being there with him. But those thoughts get dashed out instantly when he was like, no, if that were the case, she wouldn't have left a note. So I'm like, Jinshi, she clearly did not want to get taken. Get that out of your mind. But yeah. And so then he thinks, what am I going to do? So then we have Locken finding out. Locken finding out is terrifying but comical. Jinshi finding out is terrifying and arousing, but like, oh shit. Locken finding out is, oh my god. Oh my god. Locken in this moment is acting like both the father of Toru from Oran, not Toru. What am I thinking of? Haruhi. Locken is acting like both Haruhi's father from Oran High School Host Club, but also Maka's father from Soul Eater. He's like a mixture of both of them. He is acting just like Haruhi and Maka's father would, and I'm kind of all about it. And the fact that he has like the grape juice in the bamboo glass and he just like it splinters in his hand, and this other guy's like, oh shit, he's gone off the handle. Yeah. What got me is he goes from being terrifying and mad to saying that, wait for me, MaoMao, Papa's coming to get you. Yeah, very much Maka's dad. Very much Haruhi's father. I love it so much. And he literally threw a pillar into a wall. Let's not make Locken mad. Let's not make Jinshi mad. Let's not make Locken mad. Oh my god. But yeah. So then they're like, Master Locken, and Boston's like, welp, he seemed to have found out somehow. And Jinshi's like, well, shit. Now everybody knows MaoMao's missing, and it's going to be an ordeal. And of course, Shisho's missing. He is the father of an escaped concubine. Like, why would he stay there? Even though he was already going to be charged with crimes, possibly, for collusion, why would he stay there? So I'm not surprised that he's gone. So then, they're like, regarding the court lady yesterday from Shinlu, she's stabilized, but we've confirmed that she had connections to Taiho. So, okay, so Jinshi thought there was no relation to Taiho still within the palace, and we've confirmations that Taiho is probably connected, either it's like connected by blood, connected by friendship. We don't know yet. We're going to have to see. It's probably why she participated in the rebellion. Interesting. And so is everyone in the clinic a part of it? And they're like, yeah, no, none of the others knew about it, but they helped her because they all share the same resentment. Their anger is directed towards the rear palace itself. Yeah, that's a problem. So they do need to find Lowland. They don't know. Do they go after Shisho first? Do they go after Lowland? I like when Jinshi's tapping his finger because that's a sign when he's nervous. So he doesn't know exactly where to start. And they're short on time because it's like, is MaoMao going to be okay through all of this? Are they going to be led on a wild goose chase going one direction? They don't know any leads on Lowland. So what are they going to have to end up doing? And then, just as Jinshi gets nervous, guess who shows up? This guy, this little fox boy. So he has an abacus, which is a way of calculating things. He's very math oriented, and he has the most stereotypical anime glasses ever, and I love him already. But yes, he's so cute. I love him. But yes, Khan Lahan. So interesting that his name has the ka sound to it, like the royal family, but then Lahan. So interesting. And he's like, okay, there are only two people with the law name in the outer court, Locken and Lahan. Which is funny that Locken, so Khan Lahan, so Khan is with Locken. So that's interesting. That's a tie. So Lahan has been the adopted son of Locken. So Locken got with Fengshen and had MaoMao, but we established that Locken's become head of the family. Well, he needs to secure his bloodline that someone can take over for him. Well, he doesn't have any sons. He only has MaoMao, who's a daughter, and she's kind of illegitimate because she was with a concubine. So he's adopted Lahan as the heir now, apparently, of the Law clan. Well, that works out great for MaoMao because if Lahan's taking over the family, good for them. Locken secured that. That's all great, well and good. Lahan seems, we're going to talk about Lahan in a second. He seems well and good. He seems like he is carved right out of Locken's behind, even though they're not biologically related. And that leaves MaoMao with the ability to not only still use her status to get with Jinshi, but she's not responsible for the Law family line. She can go be an apothecary and do whatever she wants. She's like Loman. Great. Good on him. So yeah, it's a courtesy name, historically given by the imperial family. So that means that he has literally been approved by royalty to be part of the Law family, to be the adopted son. So it's all in stone. It is official. It is legit. I also love Lahan. He is like such a cutie pie. He also has like this voice that's like, well, I should hate him because he literally seems like the embodiment of everyone I've been annoyed with in the comments. It's like, well, actually, and like, I should hate him. I should loathe this man. But I kind of love it that he seems like he just has Locken's like, well, actually mentality, but he's kind of cute. And the way he asks, he's like, well, sure, I'll definitely do it. Also, does he have a crush on Jinshi too? Is MaoMao got competition? He's like, I wanted to show you this. He also seems like he has a praise kink, which is fun. But he's like, it's a receipt from the treasury. I love his glasses with the little wires. Those are cute. And that he looked into it. So Basically, when investigating the situations of recently published officials, he's like, I wanted you to see the original documents, but they got a bit lengthy. So I basically paraphrased, put them all together. I made an excerpt based on the most obvious ones. I love it. I love him. So the price of grain and iron have gone up. And I like these, like, interesting, isn't it? We've no droughts or insect plagues, nothing like that. And he's like, and for some reason, the price of iron has increased as well. Yeah, somebody's banking off of this. I like that he points out there's some potential fraud going on. It's maybe some money laundering. Maybe people are benefiting from these prices going up. The price gouging has some effect for someone. I love it. I love that Jinshi says he's like his father. He's cunning in a shrewd way. Yeah, there is no doubt in my mind why Lahan was adopted by Lakan. Like, they're cut out of the same cloth. I do like that Lahan seems a little bit more agreeable than Lakan. Lakan likes to poke fun. And maybe Lahan would be the same way. We don't know. This is our first encounter with Lahan. I want to see Lahan and Jinshi work together. I think, because if you think about it, Lakan and Jinshi, as much as I want to see them work together right now, they are so emotional, both of them, that putting them together is like a powder keg. I don't know if until they find MaoMao if that's a good idea. But Lahan seems to be, he doesn't really have a connection with MaoMao right now, so he doesn't have any reason to be concerned or emotional about her absence. He just wants to do the damn thing and do his research and see other people praise him for his, working well and effort. So I feel like his calm is a good balance to Jinshi being concerned. I think they could work really well together. So yeah, there's not many people that could pull off something like this. He's like, I could look more into more detail with it. I love that he smiles with his eyes closed. Like, do you want me to go do some more research? Please say yes. I'm going to do it anyway. He's like, I'm going to do it whether you want me or not. I just want the approval. But yeah, he's like, I'm your humble servant, sir. And she's like, I didn't ask for this, but okay. He's like, what did you want in return? Could you give us a small discount on the bill? After my dad threw a pillar into the gate. He's like, I really, he should reap what he sows. I love that Lahan's like, my dad's kind of crazy sometimes. And I love he has the fox features too. He's like, in exchange, I expect you to be thorough. And he's like, oh, please tell me what to do, Master Jinshi. Oh, God, this could be trouble, but I kind of want to see where it goes. Oh, buddy. And Jinshi's like, I'll use whatever I can. I fear a little bit for Shisui and Suirei when Jinshi finds them. I do, but maybe MaoMao can figure out more of why she's there and kind of be like, hey, let's not kill them, but I'm fine. I feel also like, here's the thing. If they treat MaoMao well when they are captured, because it's going to happen eventually, we know this as the audience, I feel like MaoMao might speak on their behalf and be like, show mercy to them because they did, treat me pretty well here. And Jinshi will be like, But if they killed her, when Jinshi finds them, it would not be good for either of them. And I don't think Shisui wants MaoMao to die. I think Shisui has developed a bond with her, regardless of the situation. So that makes things more complicated. But this episode is my favorite so far. I love it so much. I really do. And it has given us answers, but then it's opened up all these questions as it normally does. And now it's like, are we going to have answers? And now we have to wait 2 weeks. We have to wait a week till the voice actor special, and then we have to wait a week after that till episode 19. Okay. Anyway, the good news is by that time, I'll be caught up on all the comments, and I am planning on watching the voice actor special, so that'll be a fun little treat to kind of like give us a little... We need to be like Jinshi and cleanse our palates and take a deep breath before we dive into episode 19. But yeah. Oh my gosh, so much to think about. Anyway, I'm excited to hear your comments down below, for sure, especially about all of this. But I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more of the Apothecary Diaries. Bye!